it was interesting to hear Minister Papathanasiou speak about the macro level, but I think that the focus that we should be having, if we are to unpeel what really is going on, is precisely what this panel promises, which is to look at the sectoral level. And I'm a little concerned that at the sectoral level, things start looking a little different. Where has the growth of Greece been driven from? Primarily from the increase in employment, as you rightly say, but this has a dark side. And the dark side is that productivity has become flat or has fallen in Greece. Also, the growth of employment is primarily driven by employment in unproductive sectors in relative terms. So let's now start thinking about sectors. The sector that has driven Greece is tourism primarily, and there's been a bit of construction. And if you look at any of the indicators, and perhaps I might be again a little less optimistic than my friend George Pakoulatos, I don't think the news are all that positive when you look at them in context. The productivity of Greece lags both in each and every sector. You look at productivity per employee in terms of how effective we are in each sector, and then you can think about the value add that each sector has. For better and for worse, unfortunately for worse, tourism is one of the lowest productivity in terms of GDP per amount of work put in. And if you start looking at it a little bit more carefully, you'll see that beneath the rosy picture lies a somewhat more challenging reality, challenging even for the future of the sector. Why has tourism been able to be so effective? Partly because it is massively subsidized. It is subsidized first because of the licensing, and we are right now using, without thinking about the long-term implications, natural resources. You look at your own experience of everyone in the room. How is it that you see the Greek summer? There is a privatization of public goods like beaches. There is also willy-nilly expansion in planning, and the only force that is pushing back is the Symbolio της Επικρατείας, the Council of State, on the basis of lawsuits. And it is ironic that in a country that is so dependent on the integrity of its natural environment, we are relying on the Council of State to judge the laws anti-constitutional because they are in violation of the basic rights of its citizens, and there is a bit of a cat and mouse game that is being played. There's other ways in which tourism is subsidized, including by the fact that tourism is a seasonal business, which means that part of the time people are paid by their employers, the other part of the time they're paid by the state because they're on unemployment. If you start looking at the mechanics of it and at what has happened in Q3 and Q4, you will also see that there is a push in terms of the public debt. So tourism and building, which again, not only environmentally, but also in terms of their own viability are undermined, are an issue. Let's now go back to what we see at the European level. What did Draghi say in his report? He had 5 things. He said we need to think about the European integration and competitiveness in services, and competitiveness here is a big issue. Then he said strategic sectors. What are we doing in Greece in terms of strategic sectors? Are we really pushing for industrial policy? No. What is it that is called a strategic investment? Touristic investments in Mykonos and Santorini. Forgive me, this is utter folly. We are paying Rybolovlev, the Russian oligarch who got Skorpios, 4 million cash so he can start developing Skorpios. This is an abuse of focus, and I'm afraid that Greece is moving in the wrong direction, unfortunately, for something that is as old as Greek politics. Everyone's very excited about OPEKP and what's going on. That's not the big issue as far as I'm concerned. The big issue in Greece is policy capture. What do I mean policy capture? I mean that vested interests in every sector are ensuring that regulation, and again, the only place where regulation is really very iffy is in terms of building, where there is a support and facilitation of large touristic developments that might undermine their own futures. These are finding themselves in difficulty. And to give you one specific example from that, there's a friend of mine who is now setting up what should be an exemplar of what Greek businesses have. One of the aging sort of centers, bought a nice place in Vouliagmeni after he sold his business in the Middle East, and he's struggling getting the appropriate permits. Why? Because the highly concentrated hospital sector has the ears of the Ministry of Health, and at each and every sector, the limitations of what innovators can do are holding them back. Greece has an excess of available funds and also a shortage of the ability of transforming the economy. So let's stop supporting the sectors that are economically unproductive and potentially environmentally disruptive, and let's start being real about some of these reforms. With all due respect to Minister Silakakis, I'm not going to throw out some of the reforms. I will implement them even if 30 years late, especially when it comes to the ability of being a little bit more competitive. And again, policy capture rather than the traditional problems that everyone looks at in newspapers is one of the key areas I'd consider.